Microsoft reveals how its new Prometheus AI model for Bing works, and coming in preview in March, a brand new, faster client for Microsoft Teams. Hello, my name is Russell Smith and I'm editorial director of the Petri IT Knowledge Base, and this is This Week in IT. So it seems that recently there's been nothing in the news other than chatgpt this, chatgpt that. Now you've probably heard about the Bard versus Bing battle. Now both of these systems have been demoed in public recently, and of course there were some issues with the Bard demonstration, rather embarrassingly for Google, but we all know that the Bing alternative that's based on ChatGPT, because Microsoft basically invested a huge sum of money into OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, also isn't perfect. But in a LinkedIn post this week, Microsoft revealed some really interesting information about how they're planning to integrate this new artificial intelligence into its Bing search engine. And Bing has started rolling out in preview to some users this experience, and hopefully they'll be rolling that out to more and more people over the coming weeks. But we do know a little bit more about how all this hangs together and how Microsoft is planning to make this work for its end users. Now, Microsoft is calling its new artificial intelligence model Prometheus, and this is the technology that is now being slowly integrated into Bing. One of the problems with the large language model like ChatGPT is that if you've ever used it, you'll know that it's based on information that's taken essentially from a point in time. Now, if I remember correctly with ChatGPT, that doesn't date back to anything more than information that was gathered, I think about 2 years ago, or maybe 1.5 years ago. So if you want to perform a search query and you're looking for some current information, it's going to be a problem for ChatGPT to give you current accurate results. Now, Microsoft is trying to solve that problem with its implementation of this AI model. So what they're doing is basically combining what you can do today with ChatGPT, so that knowledge that's based on a particular point in time, and with the fresh, accurate results that it gets from its own Bing indexing. So what Microsoft is essentially saying here is that they're taking the information that might be returned by ChatGPT, for instance, and combining it with the information from their own indexed information in Bing, and basically putting it through a process which they're calling grounding. So essentially taking the ChatGPT results, checking what the results you have there are, and basically trying to make them more relevant to what's actually the current state of information that we have today. And they say that this is a revolutionary, kind of first of its kind AI model. Now, of course, this is all in the early stages of preview at the moment, so it doesn't work perfectly, and it's this grounding process of the information from chat that Microsoft is trying to perfect before it becomes more widely available. So once the information from chat has gone through this grounding process, Microsoft then adds more information to the results to make it, even richer and more interesting and more engaging for the user. So it might add information about weather, stocks, current news, and it can even add citations to allow you to get to the source of the information. So you'll just click on a link and it will take you to where that information was originally sourced from. So one of the worries about all of this stuff is how publishers are actually going to carry on making money in the future if essentially these huge, large language models essentially just scrape all of the information across the internet and then take it. It doesn't give the opportunity for the publishers to essentially make money out of advertising. And Microsoft says, in order to maintain a healthy web ecosystem, i.e. for, publications like Petri to continue to publish information that essentially these AI models depend on, that information still is going to have to be there, but we need to make money out of it somehow. So, Microsoft says this is really to help maintain that income stream for publishers, but we'll see, how well that actually works in practice and how it's all implemented. Microsoft also outlined some interesting information about how this is going to be visually presented in Bing. Now, apparently within the Bing team, there were two schools of thought around this. Now, of course, this whole, chat GPT thing could be revolutionary for search and really shake up the whole search market in ways that we haven't really seen since its inception in the 1990s. But what Microsoft needs to understand is what is the best way to implement this in order to really win the battle against Google. Now, apparently there was one school of thought within the team that said basically, well, we need to present this information in exactly the same way that we present it now, because it's so ingrained, people are so used to it, they're not really going to accept, a complete change of how search engines work. Then there was a school of thought on the other side of the coin, if you like. They said, well, no, this is an absolutely new paradigm for search, and we need to really present this information differently to make the best of it. So what Microsoft decided really, or seems to have decided, at least at this stage, is that actually it really rather depends on the search query that you're making in the first place about how that information should be provided. So Microsoft is saying that the chat-based results, what they're just going to call chat essentially, will be presented separately, and that the chat-based results will be presented in the hierarchy of results depending on their relevancy to the overall question that you're asking it essentially. So the results that you get and how they're presented to you will really rather depend on what you're asking the search engine. And I think that really seems to make some sense. And that's what Microsoft says that it's going to do going forwards with this new technology in Bing. Microsoft says, also that it's going to give users the option to decide how they want to see results, that you will get the option to basically set in the preferences, I don't know, maybe you want to see the chat result completely separately or part of all the other results based on the relevancy of the answer that chat provides. So users will also be given that option. So I know that there are people who really doubt whether chat is the right thing for search, whether these two technologies really go together and whether they should be separated or combined. But I think this is really exciting what Microsoft is doing, and hopefully what Google will also be doing. And I'm interested to see how this all goes. Another important news this week. Finally, after, 2 or 3 years of talking about this, I think since it was originally announced, I think at Microsoft Ignite a couple of years ago, finally we're going to get to see the brand new Teams client, so Teams 2.0 as it was originally called, or apparently now internally it's already Teams 2.1, and that's coming to users in preview in March, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. Now, I'm lucky that I got a relatively powerful notebook, and Teams runs relatively stably, and it is a bit clunky, but I can imagine if you're trying to run Teams on an old device, what a nightmare that must be. As we've discussed in these videos before, it's based on Electron, and Electron is really inefficient, a real memory hog, not very efficient with processing and all the rest of it. So the new client has been built from the ground up, and it's based on Microsoft Edge WebView 2. So this is basically a component of Edge. It's kind of the rendering engine, if you like, that can be packaged separately from the browser with your application, so that you can use things like, web technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript to easily put together an application. Now, of course, it doesn't have native application performance. This is not C++, but it's still a much better, a more efficient way of creating an application than using Electron. Now, WebView 2 is available for Windows. It's installed by default in Windows 11, and I think Microsoft finished rolling out WebView 2 for at least consumer installations of Windows 10. And this will be available on macOS and Linux going forwards, and this should really enable Microsoft not only to improve the performance, they've already said that it should mean 50% less memory usage from the client, but also to enable other scenarios like being able to support multiple accounts, much like the mobile client does, and just to more quickly enable new scenarios and bring more predictability to the release schedule in ways that we haven't seen up till now. So I don't know, probably you need to be maybe on the beta channel to get this in March. Microsoft has said that there will be a toggle switch that will allow you to go back to the Electron client. Of course, this is in preview, so you might find that there are some features broken, some things don't work quite as expected, but you'll be able to give this a go, and personally, I can't wait to get my hands on it. So I'm going to leave another video on the screen that you might find interesting to watch. It's about Tauri, an alternative to Electron actually. So it's kind of connected to Teams, although Microsoft has decided to use their own technology, not too surprisingly, in WebView 2. But nevertheless, it's really interesting to learn a bit about Tauri and Rust and how that will hopefully transform some other applications as an alternative to Electron. If you found this video useful, then I'd really appreciate it if you give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more weekly news updates like this. But that's it from me for this week, and I'll see you next time.